The next morning, sunlight poured through the colored glass of the Thalnora Palace, making the halls glow like a dream. Ow! But Dravenholt wasn't thinking about the beauty. His mind was still on the night before, on the moment Princess Tsariva gave him her people's trust. He turned the small crystal pendant in his hand. The symbol for trust was carefully carved on it, Vera in Royal Virinian. A word with weight. A word never used lightly. He carefully placed it in a secure pouch and stood from the guest quarters. Today, another set of formal meetings was scheduled between the alien houses. Draven wasn't expected to speak much, but that had never stopped him from listening. Inside the Hall of Stars, nobles from different planets took their seats. The floor was smooth black stone, reflecting every shimmer of light above. A wide, circular table held bowls of spices, drinks, and strange scrolls that glowed when touched. Princess Tsariva sat on the upper tier. Beside her mother, Empress Virelia, cold and commanding figure. The Empress barely glanced at Draven as he entered, but Tsariva did. Her violet eyes met his for a brief second. She didn't smile, but a small nod told him everything. She remembered Draven sat quietly and opened a digital notepad, pretending to record. In truth, his ears were tuned to every voice, every language, every pause between them. Hours passed. Delegates from the planet Narcan and the floating cities of Zavara argued over trade routes. The Empress gave commands in a mix of galactic standard and her regional dialect. Some moments were tense, others boring. Then something strange happened. Noble from House Rethsor, a rival to Tsariva's family, asked to play a cultural song from their ancient planet. It was allowed. A small orb floated to the center of the room and began to play music, soft, slow, and almost sad. To most, it was just an old melody. To Draven, it was a coded message. He narrowed his eyes. The melody wasn't random, followed the same rhythm as a Royal Virinian warning poem, one used in ancient times to signal a silent threat inside the palace. His fingers tapped lightly on the table. He followed the beat. Yes, huge part matched the words from a verse he'd studied years ago. When the pearl glows black and the serpent sleeps near, beware the hand that offers wine. A threat. Draven quickly scanned the room. Several nobles from House Rethsor were watching Tsariva closely. Too closely. Their smiles were polite, but their eyes were sharp. He leaned back in his seat, pretending to yawn. But his heart was alert. Now, later that day, Tsariva found Draven again. This time in the library garden, a place with floating platforms and scrolls made of light. She walked toward him slowly, brushing her hand against the glowing vines. "You're watching too much," she said softly. Draven didn't look up from his datapad. "And you're watching me."
Nice.
Tsariva smirked. "Fair." He finally looked. Up. That song they played. It was a message. Her expression changed at once. "You heard it too?" I recognized the pattern. "It was the poem from the temple walls, wasn't it?" Tsariva nodded slowly. Only the royal family would know that warning. It hasn't been spoken in public for over 200 years. "Played it today," Draven said. "In front of your mother?" Tsariva looked toward the floating lights, her face troubled. "Someone's planning something," she said. "We've heard whispers from our own guards. Some of the lower houses don't want peace. They see my mother's softening laws as weakness." "Do you trust your mother?" Draven asked. "I trust she loves power more than peace," Tsariva said with a tired voice, "and that she'd rather I marry a warlord than a peaceful thinker." There was silence for a moment. Then Draven said, "I can help. I've studied not just your language, but your history, scrolls, the hidden codes in your rituals."
Ah!
"Are you telling me you know my culture better than I do?" Tsariva asked, raising an eyebrow. "No," Draven said simply. "Spent more time listening to it than those who only inherited it." That made her pause. She couldn't argue with that. That night, Draven returned to his guest room and opened his private archive. Dozens of files filled the screen, notes from years of studying alien dialects, recordings of old songs, pictures of ancient carvings. He reviewed one particular document, the royal record of the fallen betrayal. It spoke of a past coup. hidden through ceremonial words, just like now. He stayed up late, searching, reading, connecting clues. A few hours before dawn, someone knocked. On his door, he opened it to find Sariva wearing a simple cloak. "Walk with me," she said. They moved through the palace silently, avoiding main halls. She led him to a forgotten chamber behind the Hall of Ancients, a place filled with cracked statues and broken tablets. "This is where I used to hide from my tutors," she said, "and where the walls don't listen." "Smart Draven," said. She held up a carved stone. "This poem," she said. "Tell me what it means." He took one look and read slowly in Royal Varinian. "The flame inside a hollow crown means the bloodline's voice has been drowned." "A prophecy?" he asked. "Or a warning?" she said. "Many of these old carvings were left by my ancestors. Messages we were told not to take seriously. But now I wonder." She sat on a bench. Her royal mask was gone. Now she just looked tired, thoughtful. "They want to remove me," she said quietly. "Maybe not today, but soon, they think. I'm too young, too curious, too close to outsiders." "Too close to me," Draven added. She looked at him. "They fear anyone who understands our words better than they do, because that gives you power." Draven nodded. "Language is more dangerous than weapons when used well." The next day, an official language ceremony was held, a cultural event where nobles recited poems from their planets. Each was meant to honor peace, but Draven and Sariva knew someone might use it for more than that. Draven wore a formal cloak now, standing by the guest section. Sariva was on the stage, her voice strong as she recited an old tale of her people's journey across the stars. Everything seemed peaceful. Then, a noble from House Rethsor stepped forward. He spoke in Galactic Standard first. But then he shifted into Royal Viren Eon. Everyone grew silent, and no one expected it. Not even the Empress, but Draven. Understood the noble's poem wasn't a celebration. It was another warning. The pearl has cracked. The serpent's child will fall. The crown must break to bring true dawn. Assassination words. Draven acted. Fast. He ran forward and shouted in Royal Virenian. "Stop the breath of shadow." Echo command. "Rail to Maven." The phrase had power. It was an old code used to activate palace defense systems, forgotten by most, but not by Draven. The floor lit up. A shield of energy surrounded Sariva just as a flash of light shot from the noble's ring, a hidden weapon. Guards tackled him at once. The crowd screamed. The Empress stood, shouting orders. But Sariva remained safe, protected by the language of her ancestors, and by the human who spoke it. The royal guards dragged the would-be assassin from the stage. His ring weapon still glowed faintly, but it was useless now. The language-coded defense barrier had saved Princess Sariva. Many in the crowd were still frozen in shock. High above, Empress Virelia's face was pale, but her voice was cold and sharp. "Find out who else knew," she commanded. Below her, Dravenholt stood quietly, his hand still shaking a little from the sudden rush, but his eyes stayed on Sariva, who was now stepping down from the shielded platform. She didn't look afraid. She looked angry. "Where did he learn Royal Virenian?" she whispered, as she walked up beside Draven. "No idea," Draven replied. But he didn't just say old poetry. He knew the exact prophecy style, the coded lines. "That means someone in the palace taught him," she said. Draven nodded. "Someone close. Maybe someone in your own council." She looked up toward the tall balcony where her mother stood in silence, speaking with her advisors. Sariva's jaw tightened. "Let's talk in private." Later that evening, Sariva and Draven met again in the underground scroll vaults, rooms deep below the palace. Filled with floating records, stone carvings, and ancient codebooks. Few came here anymore, and that made it safe. Draven lit the small blue lamp and set it between them. "Did you know about the Echo command?" she asked softly. "No," Draven said. "Only read about it once, in a footnote from a dusty explorer's journal. I didn't think it would work, but it did," she whispered. They both sat in silence. Draven studied the wall across from them, covered with cracked words in fading silver ink. It was a map of old Virinian cities, marked with symbols and short poems. "I've been thinking," Draven said. "This isn't just about removing you from power, it's deeper." "How so?" Sariva asked. The assassin used the old style. Of royal poetry, something most people forgot? But the rhythm was exact. That style was used during only one time in your history. When? She asked. "Right before the first royal betrayal war," he replied. "The same language pattern. Used in those secret scrolls we read yesterday?" Sariva's eyes widened. "You think history is repeating?" "I think someone wants it too, and they're using your people's language against them." Sariva stood up and began to pace. "They want the public to think I'm weak, know that I allow humans to interfere, that I can't protect myself." "But you can," Draven said. "You did. You stayed calm. You stood tall." She stopped. "Only because you stood with me." Draven didn't say anything, but a small smile touched his lips. Later that night, in another part of the palace, Sariva's old tutor lady Vinkar met with a hooded noble. In the shadows, "Your plan failed," the noble growled. "The human acted faster than we thought," Vinkara said calmly. "But no matter. The Empress is shaken. Her daughter is unsure. The cracks are forming." "What now?" the noble asked. Vinkara smiled. "How we test their loyalty to each other." Back in the scroll vaults, Sariva brought Draven an old cracked device from her father's private chamber. "This belonged to my grandfather," she said. "He kept his notes locked inside. Most people can't access the files. But you, maybe you can." Draven took the device and examined the markings. "It's encrypted in syllabic pattern code." "In Royal Virinian?" Sariva asked. He nodded. "Yes, very old dialect, but I can try." He tapped the surface carefully, speaking quiet commands in the ancient language. Symbols flashed. Then the screen opened, revealing hundreds of personal records, poems, and warnings. One entry caught his eye. "Beware the crown splitter. The House of Rethsor hides its voice behind stolen stars. They seek to awaken the serpent's shadow." Draven frowned. "The serpent's shadow, what is that?" Sariva's voice turned low. "It's an old name for a rebel leader who once tried to take the throne by twisting the language of the people. He created secret poems to pass messages. He caused the great civil silence." Draven sat up straighter. "Then the current rebellion is using the same methods. And maybe the same goal," she said. Sariva stepped closer. "We need to expose them, for they turn more of my people against me." The next day, an emergency council meeting was called. The Empress sat at the highest seat, her robes dark as night. Xerva stood to one side, regal and composed. Draven stood quietly behind her, like a shadow that listened to everything. "House Rethsor spoke first. They claimed innocence, claimed the assassin was a madman, claimed they had no idea about the use of forbidden language." Draven stepped forward. "With permission." "I'd like to play a voice match," he said. The Empress gave a slight nod. Drav tapped his device. The room filled with a voice from the night of the attempted attack. It recited the coded threat poem. Then he played a second voice. "Recording from a past meeting. Same rhythm, same accent, same voice." The room fell silent. It was Lord Varkina leading noble of house. "Are you?" The Empress's face turned to stone. "You have broken the ancient law," she said coldly. Lord Varkin tried to speak, but guards grabbed him before he could protest. But even as he was dragged away, his eyes met Sariva's and he whispered something. Draven caught the words. "The serpent never dies, only sleeps." That night, Sariva paced her chambers, worry in her eyes. "They won't stop," she said. "Even without Varkin, others will take his place." "They will," Draven agreed. "But now we have proof. We have the truth." "It's not enough," Sariva said. "My people still doubt me. The Empress doubts me. I'm not sure I can lead them anymore." Draven stepped close. "Then let them see who you really are," he said. "Not the princess and jewels, but the daughter, who listens, who speaks the words they forgot." "How?" Draven smiled. "With a speech not in Galactic Standard, not in Common Varinian, but in the old tongue.
Not the true voice of your people.
Sariva hesitated. I haven't used it since I was a child. Then let's practice, he said gently. She stared at him for a moment, then nodded for the next. Few days, Sariva and Draven met in secret rooms, hidden gardens, and quiet corners of the palace. Draven helped her remember the right tones, the rising and falling music in each phrase. He corrected her gently. She listened, learned, and grew, stronger with every session. Sometimes she teased him when he corrected her. Sometimes she laughed when he got too serious. And sometimes they sat in silence, just looking at the stars. The final scene of Part 3. The announcement to message was sent across the palace and surrounding cities. The princess will speak. Not in politics, but in truth. A new gathering was arranged in the Grand Circle Arena. As thousands arrived, Sariva stood on the stone stage. Lone Draven stood far back, hidden in the shadows, watching. She took a breath. Then, in Royal Varinian, she began, "Long ago our people spoke with pride, not power. They sang not to control, but to remember. We have forgotten who we are. I have forgotten who I was, but I remember now." The crowd listened, silent and stunned. Many couldn't understand all the words, but the emotion in her voice, the fire in her tone, and the pride in her eyes were universal. Draven watched, his heart steady. This was no longer just a princess. This was a leader. The echo of Princess Sariva's speech in the ancient tongue still lingered in the Grand Circle Arena. The crowd's surprise was clear. Few had heard such a powerful use of the Royal Varinian language in decades. Some whispered with hope, others with doubt, but not everyone welcomed her words. Behind the scenes, the hidden enemies plotted deeper and darker. The next morning, the palace was tense. Draven was summoned to the Empress's chambers. The cold-eyed Empress Varelia sat behind a massive desk, her voice steady but firm. "Draven Holt," she said, "your unusual involvement with my daughter has upset the balance of the court. Several nobles question your loyalty." Draven stood straight. "I am loyal to peace and truth, your majesty." The Empress's eyes narrowed. "Words human are easy. Actions, less so." Before Draven could reply, a loud explosion shook the palace. Walls trembled and alarms blared. Chaos erupted, dark-robed. Figures poured through side entrances, masked rebels from rival houses using the confusion to attack. Sariva's guards rushed to defend the royal family. But the palace was vulnerable. Sariva found Draven near the main hall. "We must leave," she said urgently. "They want to capture me." Draven nodded, grabbing the pendant she had given him. Together, they raced through secret corridors known only to the royal family. The hidden tunnels were damp and narrow, lit by faint bioluminescent moss. The air smelled of earth and cold stone. Sariva led Draven through twists and turns until they reached a narrow hatch that opened into the dense forest outside the palace walls. They climbed out silently, the night sky vast and dark above them. "We have no time to waste," Sariva whispered. "They'll send hunters." In the forest, the trees were tall and strange, with glowing leaves and soft rustling sounds. Sariva moved confidently, despite the darkness. Draven followed, relying on his training and senses. As they moved, Sariva shared memories of the old kingdom, the places hidden beneath forests. Ancient temples where her ancestors once ruled. "Most of my court doesn't even know these paths," she said. "But the poems of the royal tongue tell of them." Draven smiled. "You were born to be a leader?" She laughed softly. "You're too kind." After hours of careful travel, they reached an abandoned temple surrounded by thick vines and cracked stone walls. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of incense and old stories. "This is a place of power," Sariva said. "Here, I can gather those who still believe in the old ways." Draven set down the pendant on an altar covered with carvings of stars and serpents. "We need allies," he said. "Friends who understand the danger." Sariva nodded. "And those who still remember the language." The next days were tense. Sent secret messages using the Royal Virinian dialect, hoping loyalists would respond. Draven helped her train, sharpening her skills in both speech and strategy. They grew closer. Sariva admired Draven's calm bravery. Draven saw the princess not as royalty, but as a woman carrying the weight of a kingdom. One evening, a group arrived quietly at the temple entrance. They were led by a tall man with dark eyes and a scar across his cheek. "I am Commander Thaler," he said. "We've hidden from the rebels too long. We'll fight for you." Sariva smiled, hope growing together. They planned their next move. Draven studied old maps and scrolls. "There is a forgotten law," he explained. "It says the ruler who speaks the true royal tongue in the ancient temple can call the people back to loyalty." Sariva's eyes shone with determination. "Then we must return and speak." Meanwhile, back in the palace, the Empress was trapped between fear and fury. The rebels had seized parts of the city, and rumors spread like wildfire. She watched news feeds carefully, her mind racing. "We must end this quickly," she said to her advisors. But Sariva was alive. And now, stronger than ever, the final plan was set. Sariva and Draven would return to the palace for a public challenge, a test of power through words. The ancient temple law was forgotten by most, but it could not be ignored. They would speak the old language. They would remind the people who truly held the right to lead. The night before their return, Sariva and Draven sat near the temple's altar. She held the pendant in her hand. "Thank you for believing in me," she said softly. Draven smiled. "You've always had it inside. I just helped you find your voice." They looked at the stars together, ready to face whatever came next. The morning sun cast long shadows over the grand steps of the Thalnora Palace. Word had spread fast. Princess Sariva would return to the palace to speak in the ancient Tungyan event, unseen for centuries. Crowds gathered in the city squares. And on palace grounds, people from all walks of life, nobles, soldiers, merchants, and commoners, waited silently. Curious and anxious, inside the palace the halls buzzed with nervous energy. The Empress watched from her throne room window, her face unreadable but her eyes sharp. Sariva stood at the palace entrance, dressed in simple robes embroidered with the ancient royal symbols. Beside her stood Draven Holt, calm and ready. The guards eyed Draven with suspicion, but Sariva held her head high. She stepped forward onto the marble steps and faced the gathered crowd. The silence was thick. Then she spoke. "People of Verania," Sariva began, her voice clear and steady. "I stand before you not only as your princess, but as one who has found her true voice. Our language are true languages, not just words. It is our history, our honor, and our strength." Her words were in Royal Veronian. Many in the crowd didn't understand the language fully, but the passion in her voice was unmistakable. Sariva's eyes scanned the crowd. Meeting the gaze of soldiers, nobles, and ordinary citizens alike, Draven watched quietly. Proud, he knew the many hours they spent practicing had prepared her. For this moment, the ancient language carried weight of power that no modern speech could match. Sariva continued, reciting ancient poems and royal laws, reminding everyone of the sacred bond between the ruler and her people. She spoke of unity, trust, and honor. Her voice rose and fell like music, filling the open space with hope. Suddenly, the heavy palace doors opened. A group of masked rebels entered. The crowd gasped. Tension rose instantly, but Sariva did not flinch. One rebel leader stepped forward. He sneered, "Your old words cannot save you now, princess. The crown belongs to those who hold power, not poetry." Sariva met his gaze without fear. With words she said firmly, "We hold the power to unite or destroy, but I choose unity." The rebel leader raised a weapon, but before he could strike, the palace guards moved quickly to surround him. Draven stepped beside Sariva in a calm voice. He said, "Your rebellion is built on fear, not truth. The people know their true princess by her voice and heart." The rebels were arrested. The crowd cheered. Sariva looked at Draven and smiled. This is just the beginning, she said softly. Later in the royal chambers, Empress Virelia approached. Her daughter. You have done well, she said, a rare softness in her tone. Sariva nodded. We will rebuild, she said. Together. Days later, Draven was offered a position as royal advisor on culture and language. He accepted. It's not for power, but for the chance to help bridge worlds in the quiet moments after the chaos. Sariva and Draven stood together on the palace balcony. Watching the stars, she teased him gently. Your accent still needs work. Draven laughed, and you still have the sharpest tongue in the galaxy. They smiled, knowing their story was just beginning. The space station floated quietly in orbit above the neutral zone. Ships from many alien species came and went. Flags of peace flew at every port. Inside the Great Hall, human envoys stood side by side with alien leaders, all trying to avoid another war. Jackson Reeves stood near a silver table, tapping his fingers nervously. He was not a soldier or a pilot, he was a linguist, trained to understand alien languages and cultures. Most humans thought his job was boring. But today, Jackson was the only human the Virulent Queen had requested to speak with. Envoy Reeve, smooth voice called. He turned to see a tall virulent woman standing in front of him. Her skin shimmered like silver, and her eyes were a deep blue that seemed to glow. She wore a long robe made of layered crystal threads. She wasn't just anyone. She was Queen Zellarilla of the Virulent Empire. Jackson bowed slightly, unsure of the correct custom, Your Majesty. I have made a decision, she said without delay. You will live with my daughter, Princess Thalixa, on Varela. Prime Jackson blinked. I'm sorry. ... Live with her? It is time our species understand one another. You will share her home. Learn her customs. Let her learn yours. The Queen's tone was sharp, final. This is my royal command. T. Opened his mouth to argue, but found no words. The Queen's guards stepped forward. She was already walking away. One of the guards, taller than Jackson by a head, handed him a silver cube. Your belongings will be sent to the ship. You leave within the hour. Jackson sat in silence aboard the royal cruiser, staring out the window. Stars passed by quickly, but his mind was slower than ever. Why me? He thought. He wasn't a diplomat, just a translator. What did the Queen want? He'd heard strange stories about Varela Prime. Its cities were built from living crystal. The planet had no sun-only bioluminescent skies, and the royal palace was said to be alive, growing like a forest. But none of that scared him as much as what lay ahead, living with an alien princess. The door slid open, and she walked in. She was not what Jackson expected. Princess Thalixa was shorter than most Virulons. Her armor was simple. Her silver hair was pulled back tightly. Her face looked cold, almost bored. So, you're the human? She said flatly. Jackson stood and gave a small nod. Jackson Reeve. Translator. Not exactly royal material. She stared at him for a second longer than felt comfortable. This is a mistake. Jackson raised an eyebrow. The Queen seems to disagree. Thalixa didn't smile. She rarely explains her reasons. You'll see. He tried to read her expression. Anger. Sadness. Fear. He couldn't tell. Her eyes were hard to read. Before he could say anything else, she turned to leave. As she walked past one of the guards, he heard her whisper softly. He has no idea what he's walking into. The ship landed on Varela Prime 3 days later. Jackson followed the princess and 2 guards down the ramp. He looked up at the city. The palace towered in the distance, a massive structure of glowing crystal spires. The sky above was not dark, but filled with soft colors that shimmered like underwater light. Every building seemed alive, pulsing with slow, gentle energy. Virulon civilians walked silently, their eyes following the human guest. Inside the palace, the air smelled sweet like flowers and metal. The walls changed color as they passed. Jackson's footsteps echoed strangely on the soft floor. They brought him to his new room. It was large and circular, with a window that looked out over the city. A floating screen lit up in front of him, showing Viralon time and food schedules. "This is where you will stay," said Thalexa, appearing at the door. "Do not wander. This palace has... rules." Jackson tilted his head. "Are you trying to scare me?" "No," she replied, her face calm. "Just warning you." He shrugged. "Thanks, I guess." She paused as if wanting to say something else, then turned and walked away. Days passed. Jackson tried his best to learn the customs. He ate the soft, glowing fruit and drank thick, spicy liquids that burned his tongue. He studied Viralon's scrolls, talked to palace staff, and even practiced their quiet language, but Thalexa kept her distance. She didn't eat with him, speak much, or ask questions. Sometimes she passed him in the halls without a word. Other times, she stood silently in the garden, staring at the stars. Still, Jackson noticed things. Guards followed Thalexa more closely than they followed him. Some rooms in the palace were locked to her. She flinched at sudden sounds. She often looked behind her as if afraid of something unseen. One night, Jackson found a small blinking light on the floor near his bed. He bent down and saw a data device. Small, round, and human-made. He picked it up. It wasn't his. He'd never seen it before. When he tried to activate it, the screen showed only one message: "You're not safe here. She needs help." His heart pounded. Was this a prank? A trick? He wasn't sure. Something felt wrong. And maybe, just maybe, the princess was in more danger than he was. Later that same night, there was a soft knock at his door. He opened it, tanned. There stood Thalexa, dressed in dark robes, her face serious. "You need to see something," she whispered. "It's about my mother."